Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stuart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for tuning in and listening. And we have Larry on his mountaintop. Hi, Larry. How are you doing?
Hey, Stuart. So much going on, I don't know which way to point my binoculars next.
Yeah, it appears that there's a lot of stuff not being reported at all on mainstream media here in the United States. They're all focused on Trump and John McCain's passing. And the only thing I'm going to say about John McCain to everyone, do your research. Do your research on who he really was. Very, very interesting anyway. Larry, where do we want to start? It sounds like Deep State. Let's start with that. Sounds like Deep State's going after one of Trump's boys. And that would probably have some ramifications, don't you think, if Mueller were to indict him?
Well, I think that this is what you call, I don't know whether you call it political warfare, because we're about to overflow in reality. But there was two things happened today. It's really interesting. Number one, Roger Stone has supposedly said that he has information from the inside that Mueller's about to go after Donald Trump Jr., specifically to target Trump and provoke Trump. And this is really, they're worried about pardons. Wouldn't the most hard choice really be if Mueller really goes after Donald Trump's son to not interfere or intervene? This is really a quagmire almost, a political quagmire in the middle of the swamp. But then on the other hand, Stuart, I posted it today, and I'd like your opinion. There was a report came out, Q Files and All News Pipeline, et cetera, and moved around on the Internet. It says Americans draw red line against the deep state coup attempt upon President Trump. That line is the impeachment of the one man who has the courage to stand up to the greatest political criminals America has ever seen. What do you think?
Well, I think you have to step back and take a look at what's really going on, and that is a communist coup. They've had years to infiltrate just about every level of government. So here comes Donald Trump, and he's trying to upset the apple cart, or at least it appears he's trying to upset the apple cart. I remind people to always remember Psalm 2 and a stage play that's apparently going on. Whether it's real or not, I guess really doesn't matter. But this would be a good way to get Trump into a real quagmire, as you just said, because no matter which way he turns, no matter what he does, he's always wrong. He's wrong now with his tweet on McCain. It just wasn't good enough for everybody, and on and on and on they go. This is insanity. This is typical of the communist coup, though. This is exactly what they do. It destabilizes the nation, and that's what they want. They want the people of America to be confused, and they want chaos to come in. And if they do impeach Trump, which it looks like they're definitely going to attempt to do, this would be perfect, because this is exactly what they want. They want a revolution. If they can't get one with Antifa, which has gone on record now as saying we're going to take to the streets, they'll get one from the far right if they impeach Trump. So America's going down, folks. We know that. We just don't know exactly when. But I'm going to tell you, too, watch from now on all the way through to December. We're going to see some things you wouldn't believe, or we're going to see nothing basically happen. And I got a feeling we're going to see plenty, because we are coming up at the end of Israel's 70th year. Remember, all prophecies orientated towards Israel. Israel is the time clock of the Lord. Doesn't matter what's going on elsewhere. Watch what happens in Israel. But yeah, Larry, to answer your question, this is what they want. They want revolution. Sounds like they're going to get it. What do you think?
I think you're right. It does seem to be where we're headed. And at the very same time, I was very interested. One thing I was thinking about after talking to you today, after we had posted and shared about possible false flag in Syria.
Yes.
Do you remember back the number of times McCain went to Syria, and every time he came back from Iraq or Syria or that region of the world, there was a false flag, another chemical attack in Syria. And
yes.
You remember how Russia has been claiming all along that a lot of these are false flags, that it's done by the other side. And, I got to thinking, Stuart, and I'd like your opinion on this. It's going to be a big deal for McCain, his funeral. He's going to be in the Rotunda in Washington, I guess, and then in Arizona's capital, and it's a long, drawn-out deal with a lot of personages. Wouldn't this be the perfect time, because of his influence on false flags, it seems, connected with Soros, of course, and the deep state? Wouldn't this be a good time for a big one?
Oh, yes. And there's enough evidence to prove that it's probably a 90% chance, unless the publicity of a false flag stops it, that we are going to have a major false flag in Syria. It'll be blamed, of course, on Assad, when we're the ones who probably did it, and or deep state did it. And you have to always remember, folks, it's the Illuminati, it's global. And this is why I keep reminding people to go to Psalm 2, because this war ultimately is against Jesus Christ and against the Lord's anointed, and that would mean all the Christians, et cetera, et cetera. This is actually what this war is really all about. It's a massive spiritual fight that we're in right now, and it's beginning to manifest itself physically. But behind it all is the prince and powers of the air, the rulers of darkness, and their attempt to take over this planet. And included in that would be the arrival. We're coming up on 9/11. Then we're coming up after trumpets. We come up on tabernacles, or rather atonement, and then tabernacles. We have Kushner in the Middle East peace accord. Now, I haven't been able to vet anything about a possible peace accord at the United Nations on tabernacles, but what I did find is kind of interesting. September 25th, this is right out of their own calendar. It says annual general debate, but on the 25th, action for peacekeeping, convened by the Secretary General. Now, there have been rumors that Trump would announce this peace agreement with the United Nations. He would, in other words, announce it before the General Assembly. We don't know. We're just going to have to watch that. It's interesting. It's on the second day of atonement. And so there's a lot of things entering into why we're seeing a lot of this stuff right now. And what is going on with McCain and this, I think it's ruler against ruler. It's authority against authority, trouble in the land. Donald Trump, whether we like him or hate him, is the President of the United States. You don't have a senator lying in the rotunda in repose and disinvite the President of the United States to the funeral services? I mean, this is really, in my mind, the height of evil. This shows the depth of hatred, the deep state, of which McCain was one of them. Obviously. I don't think there's any question about it. Anyway, it just seemed very, very odd to me that you would disinvite the President of the United States. That's just my take on it. What do you think, Larry? I just think you talk about rude and whatnot. I just can't imagine they would dare do that.
Yeah, that's almost protocol beyond the pale. I mean, seriously.
Yes.
You know, for the President of the United States, the one sitting in that White House, to be not invited, in other words, advised he is not invited, and that's made very, very clear. And then today they came out and announced that, of course, Obama would be there and others, and that they would give permission, though, for Vice President Mike Pence to attend. What do you think?
Well, if I was Mike Pence, I'd refuse. I'd say, if you can't have the president, you can't have me either. If this is the road you want to go down, then go down it. Go down it all the way. Show your colors. You know, protocol's already been thrown out the window. There isn't any. We're at war, folks. We really are at war. This is really ruler against ruler to the height unfathomable by Larry or I even, maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago. I mean, we knew about ruler against ruler. We just never knew it was going to reach the proportions that it has. And I think it's going to go higher yet, which is probably what's going to cause the divisions of the states forming their own little sections where the United States is broken up into 4 or 5 places. I don't know. We're in a lot of trouble. And what else you got? I know we got a geomagnetic storm coming. What is that about? This thing seems to be accelerating.
Well, that one's really interesting. You and I had talked about it, and this is a surprise one, actually, and I'll go into this real quick, and I sure would like your opinion. I've been monitoring space weather since they sent out the alert, all day, and actually posted on my blog an alert. But anyway, this is what it says. It says, surprise geomagnetic storm last night. A crack opened in Earth's magnetic field. Solar wind from the sun poured into the field to fuel a G3 class geomagnetic storm. Now, I ran the scale on the planetary K index, and when I ran it about noon, it was KP6, which is a red storm warning, and the 24-hour maximum is showing a KP7, a strong red storm. And, these are the kind, I've done some double checking all evening on this, and these are the kinds that will actually cause radio blackouts, failures of portions of the power grid. They'll trouble satellites or knock them out. Communications will be up and down. This is, I've watched a lot of geomagnetic storms, 1s and 2, which we're in the higher range of a 2 right now, going to a 3. But a 2 is usually as high as it gets generally, but this is a G3, which is serious. And this is what's more serious, and I'd like your opinion especially on this. They're talking about a reverse polarity sunspot. The new sunspot, AR-2720, that's the name of it, is not only large, but also strange in its behavior. And what they're highlighting is that this sunspot popped up in the middle of the solar minimum, ? In other words, they don't know what that means. Reverse polarity, is this the sign of a sudden beginning of solar cycle 25? Well, we're in the minimum of 24, but they're wondering if this is a sudden break in the solar minimum and in the middle of it, and we're going right into a solar cycle 25. But they're very concerned about this AR-2720 because it's reversed polarity. And that's when sometimes you can get a flare. And if you looked at it, Stuart, it is a massive region.
It is. I noticed that. Yeah. This is huge. But what interests me is Dr. Doom and the kill shot routine. And also a very interesting travel. It says here, travel back in time using the space weather time machine to review what happened on September 10th, September 11th, and September 12th, 2017. These events make AR 2720 worth monitoring. Now, they said less than a year ago, another solar minimum sunspot about the size of this one unleashed its X-class solar flare and produced a radial storm so strong that energetic particles actually reached the surface of the Earth. This is exactly what Dr. Doom was talking about. And Dr. Doom's are a series of CMEs, but isn't it interesting that September 10th and September 11th, 1 year from this last one, is Rosh Hashanah, Feast of Trumpets. And
Wow.
2027 adds, or 2720 rather, guess what that adds up to? 11. I think the Lord's showing us a bunch of stuff. I really do. So it's a heads up, folks. It's a really heads up. Anyway, let's get on to what's going on overseas because this is right on time. What do you got on the latest? It sounds like Russia's, China, Syria, Iran are ramping up, and the United States is ramping up for a whole full-scale collision here. What's your latest?
Well, we'll dive right in real quickly, just momentarily, to the false flag situation because, ironically, two things happened in the last 24 hours that really concern me in the reason that we've got this false flag warning. And number one of that is Debka and Yahoo News both is reporting a very strange occurrence that Iran's defense minister has flown suddenly to Damascus and met with Assad and Syrian counterparts. And this is very, very unusual. And the background chatter in the Middle East news says that this defense minister is trying to fully engage the Syrian troops, the Iranian troops, Russia, and Hezbollah, and all of it into a coalition to turn and face an incoming that they are threatened with from the U.S. or its coalition. Now, on top of that, listen, we've talked about false flags, but if you read the Hal Turner situation or information, it showed that tankers of chlorine has been taken to the Middle East, shipped over there by the UK and backed by France. And that's what you use for those. And listen to this. It just came out the last few hours from Yahoo News. It says the United States has warned Russia now it will hit Assad if he uses any chemical arms, sources are reporting. So the threat to Russia, the warning to Russia, it sounds like we're right on the verge of a false flag unless, like you say, getting this out into the public domain maybe preempts it.
Well, it's interesting in false flags, and there were a number of reports about how the censorship is going on Facebook and Twitter and Yahoo and all of, YouTube, et cetera, that possibly the censoring of conservative viewpoints or alternative viewpoints so that people wouldn't really understand what's going on. Now let's take this solar situation and a possible flare that could maybe knock out like an EMP attack so that we wouldn't be aware that any attack had taken place. So I'm wondering if this combination of events isn't, they can, I don't know how you would fake that, but we definitely, and North Korea definitely has the ability, and maybe even Russia now, with that new satellite they put up there that everybody's warning might be another satellite killer, which could knock out our communications. This is going to get really serious. And again, I would remind people we're coming up on the 70th, the end of the 70th year for Israel. And I'm trying to research it, but there are those who are saying, and I don't know if they're right or not, but what they're claiming is that atonement actually ends the 70th year for Israel. And that would push it all the way into, let's see, 13th. It'd be around September 22nd, 23rd, 24th, somewhere in there. So this is a high alert because we can't prove the pre-trib rapture is correct or at trib or slightly in or mid-trib. We're going to have to wait and find that one out. The Lord certainly knows when it is. But we are definitely running into some serious times. Here's what Hal Turner said on this. To carry out the alleged chemical attack, militants delivered 8 tankers with chlorine. So we would stage a huge false flag, then we go in and attack, and the war is on. Right on time. And isn't it interesting that we're having all of this activity and everything on the news is about John McCain? What do you think?
I think you're right, Stuart. The timing is just absolutely incredible. And by the way, the reports, if true, indicate that our ships that might be involved in an attack, a missile attack on Assad and his forces, are already in position. Now, what we're also hearing is the fact that, and this is verified, from Israeli intelligence or from Turkey or other areas, that Russian warships have been moving through the Bosphorus and they have entered the Mediterranean, and they're moving quickly, and they, towards the coast of Syria.
Yep.
And at the same time, and we know that now there was at one time only 3 Russian missile ships, but now we find out there's probably 5. And Israel is also very concerned and talking about Chinese ships that are just south of Ashdod, I believe, in the Mediterranean there. So we've got forces of Russian ships and also Chinese entering the region now and in the area that could be a naval face-off with U.S. forces that would be involved. Of course, I think that what's reported, it's U.S., U.K., and French forces, Navy. So that's what's building, but apparently there's a lot of chatter going on in the background, and like you said, we're so busy with a smokescreen in America, not many know what's really happening.
Yeah, it seems to be really not much mentioned about any of this. And also, it should be noted, everyone, that these Russian missile destroyers are carrying the new hypersonic missiles, and we have no defenses against those hypersonic missiles. They could wipe out an entire carrier fleet of the United States. And remember, there were those, I can't remember who it was, but they had that prophecy, which never came to pass so far, that an entire carrier fleet, now not just the carriers, but all the attendant ships, were all taken out and sunk. And they didn't exactly say where it was or when it was. And, of course, Larry, you had that Missiles of October. And it's kind of interesting that when you get into Tabernacles, you're already into October. And there are those who did some research, I think it was last year, when everybody was so disappointed, and it advised people not to be disappointed if no rapture occurs on 9/11. It's very, very possible that we can go into Israel's 2019, but it'll still be our 2018. And we have not only trumpets, we have atonement, we have tabernacles, and then we go into Hanukkah in December. All of these feast days are kind of interesting in relationship to the possible taking of the bride of Christ. away from Earth. But we are getting very, very close to major, major trouble here. And it's just funny to me, Larry, that there's so much silence about it. And particularly now that it says here, historic, U.S. to officially reject the Palestinians' right of return. Now, just remember that Israel formally declared itself a Jewish state. And, of course, the Arabs are totally incensed at that. And so all of this is all coming together all at once, very, very rapidly. And also, according to Hal Turner, we have already got some our more advanced bombers are over there. And, of course, remember that China and Russia are in this Vostok 2018 exercise. Well, we already know from previous experience, exercises very, very often go live. What else you got, Larry? We got a couple of minutes left.
Yeah, I find it interesting, Stuart, that, matter of fact, I was watching the scrolling across Fox News screen talking about a 6+ earthquake in Iran, of all places,
yes.
And it's being followed by 4 more earthquakes. And I'm wondering if we have something operating there. But what's also telling is, I know the focus seems to be on Syria, but with Iran and this defense minister personally involved, and also Yemen today firing 2 Iranian missiles at Saudi Arabia, it sounds like a coalition standoff between them and us, or whatever. This is serious. We're just telling people. We're not trying to frighten people. We're trying to tell people use caution out there and keep up with what's happening.
Yeah, definitely. Here's another interesting thing. In Genesis 5:24, which adds up to an 11, remember Enoch was taken, and he was the 7th from Adam. Do a little research on the number 7 and 70, and you'll be amazed as we come up on the end of Israel's 70th year from May 14th, and how they compute their years in relationship to the possible taking of the bride. And remember, we have that comet approaching, 21P, on September 10th. And that's definitely a warning. There's no question about all these warnings that are coming out from the Lord. He has bent over backwards to warn everyone, look out, trouble is coming. And as Larry said, there's a smoke screen. This is going to be nothing but McCain for probably what, Larry, the next 7 days at least?
Well, I have no idea, but I have to say, Stuart, this is really, really serious because these Russian ships are carrying those caliber cruise missiles, and they can carry a nuke. And, by the way, they move at Mach 8. It's incredible the speed they've got. Now, if you'll remember, and I'll be quick, this Chinese and Russian supposed drill is a nuclear drill, by the way. And at the same time, I saw a post a couple of days ago that I believe it's the B-2s bombers were dropping dummy nuclear bombs. So something is really in the wind.
Yep, and we got North Korea yapping again and accusing the United States of being a belligerent, nasty. So we're at the verge of war. It's just a question of when the match gets struck. And when it does, we're in. And life here in the United States will be totally different. And remember, they can use war as an excuse for martial law here in the United States, and it doesn't even have to be in the United States. And they've been laying in the weeds with the draft as well, anybody under 55. So this is really serious. Anyway, thanks a lot, Larry, and thanks everyone for listening. Heads up, if anything happens, we'll definitely be on with an emergency update. So take care of yourselves, heads up, and see you later, the Lord willing.